So what's up, friends? We're doing something different today. I'm taking you on a little drive with me. I haven't done a video like this in a while. It's definitely been, wow, probably years since I've done a video where I have the camera going in the car. But I have a new phone. I have a decent setup for it, so I just have it clipped to the little sun visor there on the passenger seat. So we're gonna just hang out and we're gonna talk about some stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me fine even though it is raining. You should be able to. I have my little microphone clipped to my seat belt. So today I am on my way to Lincoln, Nebraska. It looks like it'll be about an hour and a half drive. We definitely won't be recording that whole time. But I have a friend that we met each other taking Reiki class together. And then later on, she took her master training with me. And we just became pretty good friends. We don't see each other all the time because life be lifing, but we're going to go and do a Reiki share today. So essentially what that is just two practitioners or more giving each other Reiki, taking turns to give each other Reiki. So I'm pretty excited. She's recovering from medical procedure, and her recovery time is just taking a little bit longer than she would like. So I offered for us to just do a Reiki share. And for me, life is pretty good. I don't have any serious medical issues, but, there are things that I would like to accomplish in my life. And I have roadblocks like everyone else. So this is one of these sessions that this is one of the first sessions that I'm doing for Reiki that I'm actually bringing a decent amount of crystals and have a certain intention to amplify and charge crystals while I'm getting a session. And I am going to be focused on a certain goal that I have while she's doing my session. So, with Reiki, it's really cool because, you can just go in kind of like I spoke about in my last video where, my last client really didn't have too much that they wanted to. There wasn't like a necessary goal or a specific need as part of their request for a Reiki session. It was like, I just feel like it's time. And that's totally fine when it comes to sessions, but there can be a lot more that goes into it. There can be goals that we're working to manifest. We can amplify our manifestation. There are habits that we can work on breaking, and, having that intention as we go into a Reiki session can help. And I know that I've spoken about this in other videos, but one of the reasons why I feel like it's such a great idea to get sessions from multiple people, different people, is because what I find is, for those of us who have more than just Reiki as part of our spiritual passions, all of those extra things go into a healing session. So, for example, with me, I work with the Dragon Kingdom. I have different animal allies that I work with. I'm a diviner. I am a magical practitioner, clairvoyant, herbalist. So there's like a balance of power, magic, and healing that goes into what I do for my sessions. And my friend that is giving me a session today, she is really, really attuned to like the extraterrestrial, the different ET realms. I don't know if there's a specific one like the Pleiades that she works with, but she's also done a lot more with the angelic realm than I have. So it's just really cool when you're able to get together with different people and just share and hold space and, you know, be of service to one another, because we're both practitioners. No one's charging each other. You know, this is just a share, you know, so there's a balance in all things. You know, there's been lots of conversations in the magical space, on the magical community, about charging for services versus not. And there are different, for me, it depends on the situation, you know. If it's somebody that I know is having a hard time and they're a friend or a family member, I may or may not charge them for service, especially like today, if we're just doing a share. You know, it's an exchange, it's a trade. You know, she's hosting me at her house, I'm gonna spend the night, we're gonna chit chat, she's feeding me dinner. Like, there's no need for me to be like, hey, $60 please, or whatever. When it comes to my parents or, you know, family members, I think that they did pay me once for a session. Maybe. They might have. But it just depends on the frequency too. You know, is it something that we're just doing on occasion, or is it something that, you know, we're doing once a month? Is it something that a friend is requesting, but they're always requesting it for free? Do they have this expectation or this demand that it's going to be free just because they're friends? In those instances, I would charge people, because, you know, we have to understand the balance of energy exchange. And just like I spoke about in my last video, and this is something that we definitely go through in the spiritual community, we got to heal our relationship with money. You know, we can't be so Four of Pentacles, so scared, so rigid, so, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like stingy. Why are we going so slow, guys? Now you get a sneak peek of my road rage. I'll behave because the camera is on. You know, so stingy, right? We should be looking for ways to support other people that are dedicating their lives to being of healing service, you know, being of magical service, because it's needed and it's rare, and there's a lot of people that actually don't even want to do it anymore. I think that I've spoken about in previous videos how, you know, there have been times where on different social media platforms I've had tarot readers and shop owners and small businesses that just sell online, like Etsy and stuff like that, on my different social media platforms. I've had different people on social media that teach classes and some of these things. And sometimes I just reset and unfollow some people because, you know, in the magical community, sometimes we find that the egos on these people can be a little bit inflated. And I don't know, sometimes the posts are just really negative, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, for example, I saw a post the other day where this magic worker from the East Coast here in the US that I know very not much, right? Like, we were in ceremony together when I was part of the Cabot Kentramatic Temple under Lori Cabot when I was living on the East Coast. But they had made a post that was like, to the extent of making fun of a muggle. A muggle is essentially a nomad, just a human, non-magical practitioner. I wouldn't even consider this person to be a muggle, because the post was saying, like, Just because you see a crow outside doesn't mean that it's a sign you're outside, silly muggle or stupid muggle or whatever the post was. And I'm hoping that this person that they're referring to in this post wasn't on their social media to see that they had said this stuff. And it's like there's a balance, because there are some times where you come across people that are just so lost in the fantasy of what they wish their life could look like in a magical space. And sometimes you do hear things that are kind of ridiculous, you know. When I had my shop out on the East Coast, there were some kids that would come in, and they were clearly like RPG gamers or whatever, role playing, RPGers. And they looked at our book section and they were like, "Oh yeah, you know, I shapeshifted to a fox at night." And I'm like, "Okay, buddy, if you really did that, you would not be. If you really did that, first of all, everything about your energy would be different from what's coming off you, and you probably wouldn't be just like sharing it randomly to people." But okay, you know. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, there are things that we come across that are a little silly. But on the other hand, it's like, why are you gonna dream kill somebody? We talk about signs and synchronicities a lot, and people that are open to them, open to seeing signs and synchronicities in life around them, are going to be ones that perceive them. You know, there have been times that there was like a raven or a crow cawing right at this particular moment when, you know, I was thinking a certain thing, or when I was connected with my intuition, or something along those lines. And I can look at that and say, okay, that's a confirmation from my gods, from my deities, from my spirit guides. You know, there could be a time where, because I work with dragons a lot, I could be contemplating on messages that I've received from them, or things that I'm working on, challenging myself to improve within my life. And then I see like a dragon decal or design on the side of a semi-truck. Could that be a sign and synchronicity, or is it just while you're outside driving? It's just coincidence. It's really up to the practitioner. It's up to the individual to decide. But, you know, sometimes I wish that we were more kind, curious, and like full of wonder, or, you know, something like that for our beginning practitioner friends, you know. And yeah, there are always going to be times where we have to exact boundaries. You know, there was a Facebook group that I was on called Spiritual Singles, and I had made a post and shared some pictures because I'm a spiritual single girly. And, you know, someone popped into my DMs and right away was like, you know, can you give me a reading? Now, I don't know this person. They're not my friends. They're not trying to get to know me as a friend. They just saw my post. I must have listed something to make them feel like I was qualified to give them a reading, and or maybe they do this to everyone. And then they asked for a reading. And for them, I said, I do paid readings. So if you want a paid reading, this is going to be the price, and let me know. You know, context, right? I don't know this person. They're not a friend. They're not trying to be a friend. They're trying to, for lack of a better word, exploit me for free service. Now with that, they came back and replied and said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm not interested in a paid reading. Can I tell you what's going on?" And I just never responded to that. No, I don't care what's going on. You know, everybody has things going on. And that might sound harsh, you know, but I don't care, dude. Everyone's got things going on. And it's one thing if we're doing an energy exchange. It's another thing if you're just trying to exploit me for the things that I have spent thousands of dollars, decades of practice and dedication to expanding my clairvoyant capacity, my intuitive, my psychic channels and pathways to develop. This isn't just like a freebie for anyone to exploit, right? No. So I think when it comes to so much in our magical practice, and just so you know, this conversation is evolving naturally because it's starting to move into a different place than I originally was anticipating, but that's okay. When it comes to anything in life, really, but specifically talking about our magical and spiritual practices in this video, the road's crazy. When it comes to our magical and spiritual practice, I think that boundaries are key. They're always going to be key for us. Now, the friend that I'm visiting today, after we had gone through our master Reiki training, she had opened up a little, let me rephrase. So after we had gone through and she did her master Reiki training certificate course with me, she decided that she wanted to teach Reiki class as well. She decided that she wanted to rent a little space in a yoga studio and do, monthly gatherings for the people in her local community. And it wasn't just about Reiki. She did angel readings. I guest presented for her one time and did a group tarot reading for people. I think it was around October because I'm a spooky girly, so that makes the most sense. And I was so proud of her. I was so happy that she had gotten to a point in her life where she was like, I'm not fulfilled with my day job. I want to do this practice. I want to have my spiritual practice be something that I'm working on all the time. And I have a partner that is supporting me in this. So there's not so much pressure for it to be financially lucrative right away. Anyway, so good for her, right? I was super excited for her. When I went and joined her 1 monthly session, I was like, yeah. But the thing is she struggled with boundaries. So she ended up giving it up. She ended up walking away from it. She ended up being so unhappy with what that space looks like for her that it wasn't worth it. And it was all around boundaries. Because what she had told me when I asked her about it last time is that, in her monthly gathering or her monthly circle, whatever she was calling it, she had it donation-based, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do donation-based for monthly circle or monthly gatherings. When I lived out in the East Coast, they did that a lot for our SBETs, so our full moon rituals, they would do that a lot. And it was like, hey, suggested donation is $10, but pay what you can, right? And this is a theme that we see a lot. But the thing is it's not like she's just doing what she can. She's putting money down for supplies. She is spending hours putting a program together, putting together guided meditations, getting little gift bags for whoever participates together. And what she had said was that a lot of people just didn't pay anything. And not only did they not pay anything, but they were treating this circle like it was a game. You know, they weren't taking it seriously. It was just like a time for them to make jokes. So, you know, it's unfortunate that happened, because, you know, what should have happened, or what could have happened, would have been her setting some boundaries, would have been her saying like, hey, these workshops are $15 a month. You know, and we shouldn't be worried to ask for money for the spiritual magical programs and things that we're putting together. I don't know why there's this hesitancy for us to charge for these things, especially in today's day and age. Like, we're in a time where there are many scientists that have done lots of studies and tests, and, you know, there's a lot within the magical world that has been proven valid. You know, they have proven valid all sorts of things. They're recommending Reiki. They're talking about it's not astral projection, remote viewing. There's been a lot of things where they have had a focus group send prayers or healing energy or intentions to somebody, and, you know, they have had that person in a different room across town to see the effects. They've done studies where you know, they've been focused just on intentions, like, mind, if you're thinking certain things, how does that affect your ability to manifest, your ability to heal, and all of these things. And these studies have proven to have significant results. So especially in today's day and age, where scientists are finally backing up the things that we have known and have practiced for thousands of years, there's no reason why we can't say, hey, you know, I'm holding space for this thing. It's going to be $10 to $15, you know, a month. I mean, shoot, you go to freaking Burger King, it's $25 for 2 people to get something basic that's garbage for our bodies and soul. So what's the price of something that is healing and rejuvenating and ambrosia to our bodies and souls? What's the price? What's the cost of that, you know? So, and the thing is she could have also said, she would have had to interrupt people. She would have had to say, hey guys, there will be time at the end for us to make jokes, but right now we are in sacred space. And in sacred space, you know, we are going to practice reverence. You know, that's a word we hear in church a lot. We're going to practice reverence. We are going to be calm. We are going to be intentional. We're going to be serious. We are going to make an effort for everyone to enjoy this experience. But there will be time at the end for us to be playful and have fun. You know, and just setting those expectations at the beginning, before the circle even begins, could be a way that she could have kept her practice without losing control of what that environment looks like. And I will say, I've had some unfortunate situations in my magical and healing practice. You know, I actually had somebody who tried to scam me. You know, this person had reached out to me and said that they wanted to do a Reiki session for, you know, their 2 dogs. And I had told them, like, hey, I don't have my animal certification, but, you know, I do have my Reiki access. And so if that's something you're comfortable with, we could still go ahead and do it. And they're like, okay, perfect. Yeah, I want to pay for 2 sessions each, and then we could do it, at this time. Perfect. So they sent me a check in the mail instead of paying through the normal avenues that I have available on my website. And then right after they sent the check, they sent me a message on my website, and they're like, oh no, I accidentally added an extra 0. So I paid you the incorrect amount. So if you could send me back the difference, that would be great. And I'm like, oh boy. And so, assuming positive intent, but also being a healthy dose of suspicious, I told them multiple times, I was like, this check is going to have to clear before I issue any refund. And sure enough, it was flagged by the bank as fraudulent. And so it was shredded, and I told them that I wouldn't be doing services with them, and that the bank flagged it as fraud, and that was the last I heard from them. So, it's interesting because we want a world, and when we are in magical spaces and we're in healing spaces, we project and set intentions for a world that is kind, a world that is fair, a world that is abundant and honest and loving and all of these things. And there are many times that is the world that replies back to us. But there are also times when that is not the world that replies back to us. And I think sometimes we don't realize that when we have a day job, that there are parts of it that we absolutely have so much disdain for. I have a day job right now. Well, it's a night job technically. And I'm a manager in this role. I have 8 to 16 employees under me at any given month. And right now it's just a lot for them. There was one conversation I had in particular where one of my employees was just telling me how they feel, things aren't fair, and that it's never good enough, and the demands are so much, and all of these things. And it's interesting how applicable sometimes that is, even to our own spiritual and magical businesses. I told this particular employee, I said, as part of holding space for their truth, but just being realistic about the situation, what I said was, there's not one day that I leave work and I think, oh my gosh, absolutely everyone was so genius today. All of the customers today were fantastic. Everything worked perfectly, without a flaw, without a hitch. Everything was fantastic. I was like, there's never been one single day that's what it looks like. And sometimes we forget that in our magical and spiritual practices, there are going to be things that show up like that. We are going to have customers that we have to set and embody boundaries with. They're going to be people that we have to say no more for you. There's going to be people that are going to steal from us. There's going to be people that, try to take advantage of us in order to get a free refund or, something like that. There was a class that I had done a couple years ago for Reiki, And I was so excited because I was going to have more participants than I had previously had with classes that I had done. And this one person that was trying to sign up for class, they couldn't figure it out. They would not respond to me in a timely manner. So it would be, I don't remember at this point, it's been so long, but from what I remember, I know that the communication wasn't great between us. I had said, hey, if you're wanting to participate in class, typically accepting students would be cut off by a certain time. But I had given this person an exception, which is a no-no from what I've experienced so far. I had given them an exception, and it's like, okay, I'll give you an exception, but if you're going to pay for class and you want to participate in class, it's got to be done by this time. And they couldn't figure it out. They're having issues with PayPal and all of these things. Like, if you're having issues with PayPal, there are other ways that you can pay, but there's going to be limitations as far as what I can help with. That's going to be a third-party site that you're trying to use to pay for my services. If they're flagging your account, that's between you and PayPal, that your account is getting flagged. So she ended up paying for class the morning of class, the morning that class began. And I actually had told her the night before payment even went through, I said, you're not going to be able to participate in this class, sorry. And then the next morning, the payment finally went through, and she's like self-escalating, wanting to participate in class. And I'm like, there's no way. I have other students that I have to prepare for. I can't spend my entire morning in chaos mode because this person can't be responsible and figure out how to pay for a class ahead of time. And in that moment, I didn't know if that one was a little scammy too, because sometimes people will feign emergencies or issues, or, they'll self-escalate as a way to have their instructors or diviners or healers be like, hey, no problem, let's just get you in, we can worry about payment later. And it's like, yeah, that's okay until later never comes, So with that person, they were really frustrated. They got really mad at me. And those are just some things that you learn along the way, that you learn along the journey. We want to be so generous, so benevolent. We wish that, everyone were just operating in this beautiful 5D experience. But sometimes that's not the reality. Sometimes the reality is that, you're going to have somebody that's projecting all of their shadows all over you, and you have to lovingly say, fuck off. You ever see those memes that are like, I'm spiritual as fuck and I cuss all the time? I call that balance. But yeah, there are times where it's like, I have to put these boundaries out. I have to communicate them. I have to, turn this person away. I have to coach this person like I were their manager or something, and be like, this behavior is not okay. If you want to do this behavior to other people and try to make it all about you and try to hijack the intentions and the foundation and the space that I'm creating for the entire group to make it all about you, how's that person going to act once class starts? That's another thing to think of. How are they going to act once class starts? No thanks, buddy. You're however much it was, because I had class on a significant discount like I normally do. So it was probably like $230 for Reiki 1 and 2. Your $230 is not worth it to me. not for, ruining the experience for other people, and doing all this last minute self-escalating, shenanigans because you can't figure out how to operate on an internet and pay for something. Now, if someone were to come to me and maybe they were a little bit older and they just weren't familiar with certain things, I would expect communication, right? Like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. And then I would say, hey, do you want me to give you a call? We can walk through it. It always depends on the context. It always depends on the situation. And there is fairness, equality, and balance in all situations. And there is this pressure that I've at least found in my life. Unlike my Reiki friend who has a partner that has a really successful career where she could, quit her job, and she's kind of bordering retirement age anyway. She could quit her job and focus on her practice without any sort of financial fear of like, oh God, how are we going to pay the bills? That hasn't been my reality so much, So I've had times in my life where I have quit my job and I have tried to focus on my spiritual business only. And it's just too much pressure for me. I'm just not the type of person that wants to try to sell healing services. It's like I would rather it be something that's more along the lines of, for those who are seeking it, for those who are interested in, who come across it. There was one time I made this beautiful walkthrough video of what to expect with a Reiki class, what to expect in the classroom space, what we're going to go over. And I had done an ad on Facebook because it's like, okay, how do I reach people that are outside of, what my small social media circle currently is? How do I reach more people? Okay, let me try to do a Facebook ad. And I don't know if I set it up wrong or what, but the only responses that I got from that ad were so much hate. So many people trying to come at me like I was a scam artist. So many people coming at me like I'm going to hell. Just like very stupid, fucking low vibe, troll, reptilian, fucking brain mentality. And and then for those of them who weren't coming at me that way, they were scammers. So it was just, there was nothing good that came out of that post. There's been so many interesting things along the years, and it's just like, okay, well, that didn't work. But the thing is it is one of those things where it's kind of like creating a new herbal oil or blend, My challenge is sometimes when I try it once and it doesn't work out right, I'm like, ooh, that's a no-go for me. But it's like, okay, could I have changed my settings? Could I have changed my audience? Was there something that I did that was incorrect that I could have altered to get something that's more aligned with what I'm specifically looking for? And that is definitely something that I've struggled with over the years. But the reason I bring 40 minutes later, the reason that I bring all of these things up is sometimes we don't realize that the work that we are doing is so very important, but it is also going to challenge us to grow and to mature and to wisen up. It is going to challenge us to communicate and set boundaries and learn what works well, what versus what doesn't work well for us, we will be required to reevaluate our beliefs and our boundaries and our practice on occasion too frequently. And it's never going to be absolutely perfect. This life, we have a lot of contrast. And depending on where we are and what cycles we've broken through and where we're going next, our contrast might look different. It might not show up the same way all the time. It might not show up so extreme. But the contrast is showing up in our lives for a reason. Are we going to sit with it? Are we going to hold space for what our beliefs are around it? Are we going to self-nurture and self-soothe so we don't let it completely deteriorate our passion and drive for why we are here in the first place? Or is one roadblock, one obstacle going to be, what topples the tower? What pulls the rug out from underneath and everything's gone? And sometimes if we aren't diligent, if we aren't reflecting on these things, we do have people that are like, no, I just can't. And it's because we have this vision, this idea about what our magical healing business looks like. But if it were always perfect, we might have no clients, because people aren't just going to come across our threshold being in a healthy, whole, stable, good space. There are many people that are a hot mess, and they're coming across our threshold because they're trying to find something better. They're trying to discover something better. They're seeking something different. And we have to be humble enough, and we have to be firm enough to be able to hold space with where they are while trying to guide them to what better looks like, if it's within reason. I spoke about in the past that there was somebody in my life outside of my current clients and people that follow me on social media, which is really small at this point because I had reset all my social media like a couple years ago. And this person wanted me to do some spiritual work for them. And their personality was so awful that they really just treated me like I was their secretary. Very disrespectful. They treated me like I was a speed dial psychic, but they also were like looking for ways to avoid paying for any services, but were trying to get me to give them services for free. Stuff like that, those are boundaries for me. When people are trying to exploit me and being disrespectful to what I've spent decades mastering, that's when I'm like, nope, go find someone else. Because there's a good way to reciprocate, to help you and to benefit me. And there is a very selfish, naive, childish, exploitative, way of doing things. And it's like, which one are you going to be? Because one will have access to me and another won't. So really it's just to say, is it something that you're okay with? Is it something that you're going to be holding space for? I recommend to, often hold space for these conversations. When you have a really shitty experience with a client, You know, is there a way that you can pause and respond later? You know, can we say, hey, I'm going to have to get back to you. Let me kind of think this through, so that way you can gather up your boundaries and what is going to work for you. If it happens, you know, and it's too late, it already happened, can we process through what happened and say, oh my gosh, I don't want that experience again. What happened? What can I do different? Is there something I can communicate differently? You know, can I set more clear expectations? Can I do a little caveat, you know, for like, I don't do these types of things. Like, for example, in my mind, I'm thinking of divination readings. There are certain themes within a reading that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do anything around like court cases. You know, oh, will I win at court? I'm not doing that. You know, certain things that are very extreme, life or death, not doing it. You know, and sometimes you don't realize until you tried it and you're like, this was awful. It was so depleting. You know, it was, the client was insatiable. I don't feel like it benefited anyone in general, like not doing it again. But instead of saying like, I have so much anxiety and stress and frustration about this situation, I think I'm going to quit doing readings altogether, or I'm going to shut down my business, or I'm going to shut down my practice. I just can't. That's when you take a beat. You take a step. You hold space with yourself and you say, okay, this was something that was not fun. What can I shift? What can I clarify? How can I make it where it doesn't show up like this again? Or I have more guardrails around it. So if I start seeing these red flags that are leading up to, ooh, this might be this thing that I already expressed that I don't want, I know that, and I can plan accordingly and, you know, negate some of these bad experiences. So I'm really excited that was what decided to come through today. My intention was to talk about something a little bit different in today's video, but I really enjoyed what came through. So thank you so much for holding space in this conversation today. I hope that you got something from this, especially if you're somebody who is, you know, thinking about starting a practice, thinking about, you know, opening up space for clients, magical healing arts, you know, some of these things. I hope that it gives you some ideas and some permission slips and some resources for how it can be a thriving business while also protecting yourself. If you have any thoughts, if you've experienced different things, if you have any questions based on what I've shared, you know, I've been in this space for, 21 years at this point. So I have lots of thoughts. Obviously, we just did an hour-long video with pretty much zero intention, and I think we have some really good takeaways here. So, yeah. Share anything that you'd like down in that comment section below. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel, so that way you can stay up to date with videos as they come out. As always, this is NeMina. Stay wild and spooky, but don't forget to stay magical. I will see you next time. Until then, take care.